Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
All right, yeah. Reed says, that was weird, but you're good. Something's going on in the other channel. As long as I keep that potted all the way down, I don't have the delay. I'm in Maple Valley, been here for 2 weeks now, and we'll be here through the end of the week. My dad's service is on Friday, 12/12. Couldn't work out any better than that. But I'm not working with my normal equipment. So there's some weird shit about when you buy the cheap stuff off Amazon sometimes you get that. Do I sound good now? Am I sounding okay, guys? Can you hear me? Are we good? All right. Yeah, Cardinals, Sean, not helping us out today. That game going on in the background. Thought maybe we could do what we did with the Rams a couple of weeks ago, where we could kind of keep an eye on that as we're breaking down the Seahawks game. I could do a little play-by-play, and they'd pull it off for us. But the Cardinals suck so bad they can't even play spoiler properly. It's going to be interesting to see what those guys do down in the offseason. Look, there aren't that many ways that you can dice and slice a 37-9 victory for the Seahawks. Here's how I would sum this game up, and then I pretty much just kinda, wanna open it up and we'll talk about it, is even when the offense was struggling in the first half, and I talked the other day about how the defense. I wrote about this on Seahawks on SI as well, how the defenses that we're going to face down the stretch, 3 of the 5 are very, very good and among the top 5 in the league at doing the one thing that has been Sam Darnold's kryptonite over the last couple of years, and that is being really good at disguising coverages. It's what we saw the Rams do. The Rams, the 49ers, and the Panthers, the top 4 teams in the league at disguising coverages. I also talked about how the ramp up to that, I thought was pretty solid. The schedule kind of baked in a couple of opportunities for Sam to get similar looks. Facing Raheem Morris this week, not quite as high of a disguised coverage rate, but also not at the bottom of the league either. They're 12th, but they also blitz a lot more than those other 3 teams. Those other 3, like the Seahawks, near the bottom of the league in pressure rate, they like to play coverage and disguise things on the back end. That's given Sam some problems. So I thought this would be a good thing for him to see heading into those games because I thought the defense was gonna be good enough. I just didn't think, especially with Drake London out, I just didn't see how this Falcons team was gonna be able to score enough to win this game unless it was one of those weird games where we showed up all sluggish and turned the ball over a ton and let them hang around. Now, it looked like that early. Pressure package that Raheem Morris brought was working. They got to Sam Darnold twice. A couple other times, they forced him off his spot. He had to make a couple of plays on the move. But man, the adjustments in the second half for this offense. I tweeted this. I said it in our Discord as we go throughout the game. Those of you who wanna get in on that, just go to nwforever.com and get all set up there. I said, "This might be my favorite version of Clint Kubiak we've seen this year." The second half version of Clint Kubiak. We've seen this 2 weeks in a row now. What's striking to me about watching this offense is what was the story through the first 8, 9 games of the year? That starts. The first time in a long time, we had that streak of 17 straight games, 18 straight games without scoring a touchdown on our first drive, and then we did it like 4 or 5 games in a row, and that's how we were putting teams away, scoring early, letting the defense clean their ears back and do what they do best. It's been much different since that Rams game, especially the last 2 weeks. Vikings came out, Brian Flores through the kitchen sink. Seahawks sacked Sam 4 times in the first half last week, 0 in the second half. The offense looked much better, got that running game going, got more balance. This week, more of the same and then some, and I thought it was even better. The pressure package got to them. And they've got some for the first time. This has been an Achilles heel for the Falcons for several years now. As someone who follows the draft really closely, they just haven't been able to get any pass rushers down there. And they've even had a couple of attempts to get pass rushers fail. For example, Arnold Ebiketie in his 3rd year or 4th year isn't what they expected out of him, out of Penn State when they took him in the second round a couple years ago. But James Pierce this year, Um, they've added a bunch of guys to that defense, young guys, that their ceiling now as far as a pass rush team is better than it's been there in quite some time. And then you have Raheem Morris putting it all together, one of the more respected defensive minds in the league. And the way they got to us was different than what the Vikings did last week. Last week, the Vikings were kinda getting us from all angles, right? Some of their disguised pressures. Falcons in the first half in this game were just beating our tackles. Charles Cross got beat a couple of times today. I tweeted that he or put said it in Discord somewhere. I was mostly in Discord during the game. That's where I hang out now. I thought he cost himself some money today. Like, Pierce on the first half just flat out beat him on the edge. Rob Staten even tweeted at one point during the game, "I wish Charles Cross was as good as everybody thinks he is." And I get that. He's still a guy you wanna sign long term. He's a franchise left tackle. I just don't think he's ever gonna be in that top 5, maybe not even top 10 range. But still good enough. That's a conversation for another day. But they were getting beat on the edges, and it was quick pressure too. Sam just didn't have a lot of time to get to his second read. But there were a couple of signs early on. Right? Even as the first half was sluggish, it ended 6-6 at the half. Obviously, Seahawks had to settle for a couple of field goals. Darnold was just 9 out of 15 for 67 yards and an interception. It looked very similar to a couple other interceptions we've seen from him this year where it's the bootleg, he's rolling left, and he just tries to force the ball in there. It was a third down, forced the ball in, throwing back across his body, kinda going away from his hand. We've seen him do that well, but it's the degree of difficulty is a little higher, right? Also looked like yet another play, and I know we talked about this a lot in Discord because I've been saying for weeks, I wanna see Sam use his legs more. We'll come back to that in a minute. I thought that was an opportunity there. Don't know if he would've made the first down, but I thought it was a better chance than what the coverage was showing with everyone flowing that way. I thought that was a tendency that maybe they need to do a little more self-scouting on. Like, I was expecting a weak side bootleg on that play call. The Falcons probably were too, but he gets the interception there, and then he had the pressure, right? But there were a couple of signs. They got Rashid Shaheed involved in this one a little earlier, 2 catches for 28 yards. There was a 3rd and short where Kubiak did a nice job scheming up just a nice little easy toss to Shaheed for first down, and JSN still had his 4 catches for 30 in the half as well. So even though Darnold didn't have a prolific half, 9 out of 67 or 9 out of 15 for 67 yards and the interception, I thought he did a nice job of not forcing some things on those sacks, just take them. He's been better at that the last couple of weeks. First half against the Vikings, I think there were a couple examples of that too, and also last week of him just throwing the ball in the dirt, throwing it away. Didn't have to do that as much today, but just take the sack. Live to play another day and trust your defense. And they were only 2 for 7 on 3rd down in the first half, but there were those little signs, right? Didn't like the way they started the game, that first drive, 3 and out. Kubiak dials up a 2 sideline screens, quick screen to JSN, quick screen to Ken Walker, both negative plays. He had, 4 or 5 of those negative yardage plays in the first half. Didn't like that, right? And yet, lost the time possession battle slightly at halftime too. Everything else was, pretty equal yards and yards per play and all that, but I think Atlanta had, like, a 3-minute edge. But it never felt like the game was in jeopardy. What it did feel like is we haven't experienced this in a while. They've been so good in those 10 AM games, those East Coast games. Kind of felt like 7, 8, 9 years ago, before 10 or 11 years ago, before Pete fixed it, kind of felt like the Mike Holmgren era where those 10 AM games were a real bugaboo for them, and they would just seem sluggish, and then they'd get going, and it kinda seemed like that early, at least on offense, but it just also seemed like they had a good plan. I never felt concerned that it was gonna be one of those games that was gonna get out of hand and the Falcons were gonna win. I just didn't think they had the weapons and the ability to beat the Seahawks on offense without anything crazy happening. And then the adjustments from Clint Kubiak, I thought were even better than the ones we saw last week. Last week, it showed up in really one drive, and then the one at the end to kind of put it away. This week, second half, Obviously, it helps when Rashid Shaheed takes the opening kickoff of the second half back 90 yards for a touchdown, so clearly his most impactful game as a Seahawk. But then the offense after that, their next 5 drives, touchdown, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, and then punt from Michael Dixon inside the 5 to seal it in the game. That was it. I mean, the offense came out and Sam wasn't, to me, just watching with the naked eye, right, not seeing the pressure numbers, I don't think he was pressured at all in the second. And there was something else he did. Continued to get Rashid involved. We'll look at the total stats here in a minute. Had a nice day for JSN. He ends up with 2 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp gets another one. Sam ends up in the first half, what were those first half numbers again? 9 out of 15, 67 yards, interception. In the second half alone, 11 out of 15, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns, no sacks. At one point, he was 8 out of 8. And he had a couple of big plays with his feet, and these looked more decisive. And Mike McDonald was asked in his press conference after the game, Greg Bell asked him, "Is that a point of emphasis? Is that something you guys have talked to him about doing a little bit more?" And he didn't shy away from the answer, you know? He gave kind of a general answer about that's one of the things we like about him, but he acknowledged that, yeah, it's something they talked to him about. It's funny because right before the game, I was messaging with someone that like to see that more often because there was a highlight posted from somebody else making some plays with their feet, some of their quarterback, and I said, "Man, I wish, Sam would do that more." Those were impactful plays, a couple 10, 15-yard gains, right? Um, but I thought, and Brock Huard agreed with me. Let me put this up here real quick. Oh, ooh, don't wanna give that away. We'll come back to that in a minute. This is something that Brock tweeted after the game. He said, "This is my favorite Sam Darnold game of the season. It won't be his highest QBR or pass efficiency, though it will rate very well. Loved his response to early adversity, loved his running and extending plays, loved his pinpoint accuracy downfield, loved his feet and eyes connection." I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this game. The concern after you have a performance like he did against the Rams is, does it stick with you? Talked a lot about this the next week against Tennessee when it seemed like there were a couple of moments he got happy feet. There were a couple of moments where maybe he, didn't pull the trigger because maybe he was afraid of turning it over, and that's a concern. We talked about that right after the Rams game. Like, let's hope his response to that isn't to be so careful that that part of his game that allows him to be so good with the explosive plays down the field, that confidence to let it rip when he thinks he sees it, that isn't dulled, that we don't lose that. And we saw that come back. There were moments in the Tennessee game, kind of, whichever you were looking for. If you were looking for reasons to be concerned, there were a couple plays where you can go, I don't know, the Rams might have broken him," but there were also, plenty of plays to look at and say, "Okay, this is a nice response from him." Thought it was another step forward even in the second half against Minnesota last week, and then this week, I think it was as good as he's looked all year because while he's being more careful with the ball generally, I think he's more willing to take the check downs now. That was something they talked about on the broadcast. There were a couple nice little plays to Varner and Charbonnet, one that he dropped, but then he came back just a couple of plays later and redeemed himself, where it was just a beautiful job. The drop, I think, exemplified what I'm talking about the most because Sam scanned the entire field. This guy's top 3 in the league in going to his first read, and that's been the biggest worry about this offense. First read away with this offensive line just not quite, not quite to that level yet where they can just give him all day to throw no matter what the defense is throwing at him. But take the first read away, and then he's in trouble. Well, on this particular play, and there were many of them in the second half, but this one I thought exemplified it the most, and I'm sure we'll see it when we go back and look at it in all 22. I mean, he scanned the entire field. He came off his first read, his second read, his third read. Oh, here comes Charbonnet cutting into the middle of the field, hit him for what would have been an easy first down on, I think it was second long, dropped it. But it was a great example of, I think, where Sam's head is at now. And again, I think that the defenses we've faced and the games we've had since the Rams game have been sort of a perfect training ground, sort of a perfect ramp up and prep for him to get ready for his 4th meeting against Chris Shula and the Rams. The first 3 didn't go well. Like, that's his Achilles heel. I feel like the prep to get him there is even better. The Colts are an interesting team to face next week too. They're among the bottom of the league in both pressure rate, and disguising coverage. They just kinda line up and say, "Here's what we do." That might actually be a nice little respite for this offense to attack. Um, and then, of course, the news with the Colts today, Daniel Jones goes out, looks like a very serious injury. I haven't seen anything in the last hour or so, but, you know, it was called an Achilles. You see the video replay. We're getting pretty used to diagnosing this now. Unfortunately, as fans, I never like to see injuries, but it was the other leg. They had him playing on a fractured leg. Maybe he's favoring that a little bit more, but it was the other leg. The left leg is the one that's broken. The right leg is the one where it just looked like the Achilles popped. He's slamming his helmet down on the field. It certainly looks like Daniel Jones is not gonna play next week against the Seahawks. And so now the Colts are really in free fall. They've lost 4 of their last 5. I think it's 3 straight, 4 of their last 5. They got beat pretty handily today. Um, Riley Leonard, the rookie, day 3 draft pick out of Notre Dame, came in relief. Remember, Anthony Richardson said he had that, fractured orbital socket a couple of months ago. He's been eligible to come off injured reserve for a while, but hasn't been medically cleared yet to resume football activities. So the Seahawks are gonna face Riley Leonard on Sunday, and then the Rams 4 days after that. So I just really, really like what I saw from this offense. And as I started to touch on earlier, it's kinda funny how we were getting off to the fast starts for a while, but then my question was, the first half of the season, what does Kubiak do when he's off script and has to adjust to what's happening? Didn't really like some of the second halves that we saw after those fast starts. Now that's flipped around. The scripted stuff's not working early in games, whether that's teams are figuring out our tendencies or what. But Kubiak has shown me something in the last few weeks in how he adjusts, goes with the flow of the game, because again, that second half, it was as if suddenly the Falcons couldn't get any pressure on the Seahawks. We were able to run the football, and Sam played really efficient football, but took advantage what was there, and that still led to some explosive plays down the field. Um, it's and then I have to mention this, how often did we complain during the Pete Carroll era, even when they were Super Bowl contenders? They weren't great at putting teams away. They had a tendency to play down to the level of their competition, and then that whole Pete Carroll can't win the game in the first quarter thing, that was a pretty consistent criticism of mine all through his tenure, even when those teams were really good. There were times where you felt like they should have been able to finish, and they weren't very good at finishing. They were really good at coming back, late drive wins, things like that, like clutch performances, but they weren't that good at stomping on teams and putting them away. The Seahawks were number 1 in the NFL in point differential coming into this game. That is probably not gonna change with a 37-9 victory now. I wanna go to this. I thought this was a really interesting graphic that they showed during the game, the second half. They're talking about the teams that are vying for the number 1 seed in the NFC, and, it's pretty quick how these narratives change. We look at schedules at the beginning of the season, and then, everything's rated based on former win-loss percentage, or sometimes it's based on projected win-loss percentage. At the beginning of the year, you see all these rankings of who has the easiest schedule in the league and who has the worst. I think the 49ers at the very beginning of the season had the easiest schedule by previous year win-loss percentage. Well, that how reliable is that? As the season goes, those things change, right? What felt like a pretty easy win against Houston to us, it didn't seem like a quality win at the time. What Houston's done since then, especially on defense, that one looks a little better, right? And so you look at this graphic, and now you see that the Rams have the 7th easiest schedule the rest of the way, which is pretty remarkable considering they play the Lions and Seahawks their next 2 games, but that speaks to what they have in their final 2 games. I think they finished with Titans, Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken. Seahawks with the tied for the 4th hardest in the NFL, and the Niners have the 8th hardest. So they go from having the easiest schedule overall, now down the stretch, they're finished, they face the 8th hardest schedule. Seahawks are at 4. I just thought that was really interesting. Here was that graphic that I, teased earlier. This is what you should be most excited. We can talk about well, I have. We can talk more about Sam Darnold's efficiency today and how well that would seem to bode for, the Seahawks offense as it, approaches the playoffs. And just one more thing about that, there was a moment during the game where it struck me in the first half. I thought this kinda reminds me of 2020 a little bit, and and this would be a concerning thought. That was the let Russ cook year, where he got off to that tremendous start, was setting records for the first 5, 6 games, and through the first 8 games, he was getting MVP buzz. He was lighting the world on fire. And then the whole thing that was so well publicized with teams figuring out to play too high and take away the deep middle and it shut that offense down. There were no answers from Schottenheimer still at the time in 2020, right? There were just not enough answers, and that offense struggled so much the last half of the season to the point that it just took away any hope that we thought that team might be able to make it. And so for them to bounce back the way they have, really, really promising, especially when you take it in that context, because the idea that maybe the league has figured us out on offense was a legitimate concern, but I think there's plenty of evidence after the last 2 weeks that the adjustments are there from our side. But this is what the running game has looked like now. In the first 8 games of the season, Seahawks only topped 100 yards rushing as a team 4 times. In their last 5 games, they've topped 100 yards. 5 straight games of over 100, and they're averaging over the last 5 games 140.2 yards per game. If you extrapolated that out over the season, that would put them 3rd in the league. Buffalo at 155.7, Chicago at 153.8. That just gives you some context on how effective that running game's been. It doesn't always feel that way because we get the negative plays, but it does seem to be more consistent now. I think the big key in that is Kubiak just doesn't give up on it. I thought he did a really nice job today too. Again, just going off the live watch, not charting it or seeing anything else. Sometimes your perception can be a little skewed. I felt like he stuck with throughout the game, like a lot of good mix of under center, shotgun. I thought there was a lot of play action even in the second half when the game was kinda getting out of the way. Um, I thought that was really, really cool. So, uh we're gonna get to mostly comments, Q&A, all of that. Just wanna hit a couple things first. The Sizzle All the Way sale still going on with Omaha Steaks. Will be going on all the way up until the holiday. Great way to give gifts. You can just send a case of steaks to a friend or loved one. They're gonna show up on their doorstep in a cold pack, individually packaged, every cut you can imagine, all USDA certified. Omaha Steaks, a family-run business. They've been doing this for over 100 years. Our family's been eating their steaks since I was a kid, and right now they're gonna give you 50% off site-wide as part of the Sizzle All the Way sale at omahasteaks.com. And then when you go to checkout, they're gonna give you an additional $35 off for being a viewer of this program. Use the promo code FOREVER. Tough day so far in the early go of it, for me in our Pick'em League on the Sleeper app, 5 and 4 after a rough week last week. I think I've dropped into 3rd place out of 35 of you in the league. Congrats to Rainier23, who continues to lead. If you wanna get in on being a part of the best sports app that's out there right now, best way to follow along with games, the real-time play-by-play tracking, chat with other members. You can get in on some daily fantasy sports. You can use the free parts of the app anytime you want, but if you wanna get involved in the games of skill right now, they're just gonna give you 20 bucks to get started. You sign up, no deposit necessary, but if you wanna make a deposit, they're gonna match that up to $100, 100% if you use the promo code FOREVER. Check out the Sleeper app today, terms and conditions to apply. Also wanna let you know about this bracket of boom over on Patreon. If you go to nwforever.com, that'll get you there. And this is where all my content lives. Seahawks forever, Mariners forever. Did a reaction yesterday to the trade. Harry Ford for Jose Ferrer. All my video, audio, doesn't have the YouTube ads in it, and it gives you access to my Substack for free and also the Discord where we chat and stay connected during the week and also hang out during games. Every month, you get to pick a video for me to do. You get to pick the topic. Last month, it was looking at, Pooh Paul, the rookie out of Ole Miss who's on the practice squad and how he might fit into that inside linebacker group, and kind of expanded it to talk about that group and that position group as a whole. First week of the month, we pick topics, and then we go quarterfinals, semifinals, finals until you decide on a topic for me. These are the 8 topics going right now. If you wanna get involved in that vote, gotta be in the Discord. If you are a paying member on the YouTube channel, you haven't received a link to get to the Discord, you also get that as part of your membership over there. Reach out to me if you would. You can email me, it's in the description, or DM me, whatever, I'll get you that code. Otherwise, head over to nwforever.com and check that out. It's all of my content, be part of the community. Best way to support me as a full-time content creator, and it's all one low price under one roof. Um, let me go back here and catch up with what some of you guys were talking about here. Good to see you guys. Reed Go Hawk says, "Wow, what a game! The potential of this team is crazy." We talked during the midpoint of the season about how we could see the pieces, but they weren't all coming together. They hadn't really played a complete game, and you can make that argument again for this game. The offense didn't play well in the first half, and yet they beat that team 37-9. And while the Falcons, what does that drop them to? Drops them to 4-9. I mean, there's some talent on that team. It's good coaching staff, and any win is a good win in the NFL. But that's 37-9 without having a good first half on offense. They really are shaping up to be that kind of team that gives you confidence, or should, in the playoffs, because they can beat you different ways. Some teams can beat any team on any given Sunday, but they have to play perfectly in all phases. The Seahawks are not one of those teams. The better teams aren't. They can beat you in different ways. The Rams obviously can beat you in different ways. They can shut you down on defense, or that offense can hang 40 on you. They can do it running the football or throwing Matt Stafford over the top. Even the Bears, as they continue to grow, we see there's games that last week, Caleb Williams wasn't great, but they ran for like 200 yards, right? They can beat you different ways. The Seahawks team is looking like that. Look at the special teams today. Blocked kick, blocked field goal, and then the kickoff return. And can we talk about Nick Emmanwori? This kid missed, what, 4 games early in the season? He gets injured on the 6th play of the year, and they had a big role in mind for him. He was a polarizing prospect coming out in the draft. Some people thought he was a better athlete than a player. But the way they've developed him and brought him along, and the role that they've put him in, it's the perfect example of, "Hey, this is what this kid can do well right now. Let's not ask him to do more than that." But as the season goes along, it seems like they're expanding that, right? They're rushing him off the edge as a pass rusher. He's covering tight ends and running backs, receivers at times. He's making plays 30 yards down the field in coverage. He's physical, he's hitting, he's picking off balls. Uh, Today he had what? He had a sack and a half. He had an interception. He had a couple tackles for loss. He was everywhere. And there was a moment we all kinda inhaled, didn't we? Gasped when it looked like maybe he broke his hand. That he went to punch a ball out, and try and force a fumble, and kinda hit the player's helmet, but also then what I saw, it looked like the helmet kind of pinned the hand on the turf as it came down, and he left. He was clearly in pain. They took the glove off and everything else. I thought, "Oh, man, I thought he was out for the game." Okay, at that point of the game, didn't need him. Thought maybe it's one of those things they can just wrap up and he can play sort of like Jarran Reed is right now, who, by the way, forced a fumble today with that club that he's wearing on his wrist that he had repaired. But Emmanwori just continues to make plays. And how happy were you today to see Devin Witherspoon get his 2nd interception? He gets his first interception in the 2nd game of his rookie year, pick 6, hasn't had one since. Now near the end of his 3rd season. And that play, I it might be the play of the game. I was so happy he ended up coming up with that interception. First of all, he was a big part of the Emmanwori interception, making that happen. And a couple other PDs, a couple other big hits. The conversation with Spoon coming into this week, and McDonald was even asked about it earlier in the week, like, he doesn't do much statistically, and yet you have people like Michael Shandugar and Greg Bell saying he's the best player on that defense, and Mike McDonald kind of acknowledging those things too. So for him to finally get a pick was great to see, and the play, like, he was a classic example. We want everything to be clean and perfect, right? We want our DBs to be able to read the eyes of the receiver, whip their head around, pick off every ball. This play wasn't like that. Like, Spoon knew the play was coming his way, but he wasn't in position to turn around. It's such a fun replay to go back and watch. He knew the ball was coming. He just kinda starts throwing his arms in the air just to somehow, some way interfere with it, and he does, and it knocks the ball out. I think he even had to kind of stack and shed a block to get there in the first place, and then the ball gets bad in the air, and he ends up coming down with it. I thought it was a great play, and finally he gets rewarded for what he's been doing in coverage, because he's been phenomenal. And somebody else, I mean, we could just keep talking about people over and over again, right? Um, I thought Reek Wallen was outstanding, and there was a moment where he had the taunting penalty in the second half, and you kinda think, "Shit, here we go again." He had 3 unbelievable pass breakups within the next 10 plays after that, including one in the end zone. He was phenomenal. He's playing his best football as a Seahawk. He's coming up, he's flying up, he's making hits in the running game. That's where the taunting penalty came from, was after a hit. He's being physical. I think he's changing the perception, of how he fits in this defense, and I think the coaches have taken notice, and we may look back at this and say, "Good thing he didn't get traded at the deadline after all," because we like Josh Jobe, but he's clearly better than Josh Jobe. He still has those elite traits. I think they're gonna try to sign him, and I think they should. They can. I have to be a little creative, but there's plenty of levers. We'll talk about this another day, but, the last time I did a show on the salary cap, like, you can just go look at the raw numbers and say, "Oh, they have this much space available according to over the cap." But you see how many big contracts of theirs they have that easily have levers built into them where they can create significant cap space without hurting themselves too much in the future. Like, they've done a nice job structuring all their veteran contracts on those guys, and then all those guys are performing, so you may just feel comfortable extending them and clearing even more cap space. So, um I thought he was outstanding too. Um, yeah, Emmanwori was everywhere, his best game yet, and that's saying something. He's had a couple great games. Misfit says Spoon and Demon Wari were lit. He should be in the conversation for defensive rookie of the year. Absolutely, he should. X-Wing. John says, Loved we got to see the speed going. More of that, please." It really, and there was a play early too where Sam tried to hit him back shoulder, and it would have been a big game. It just kinda looked like maybe again their timing was just slightly off. I think there was the right play that I'm thinking of too, there's a little bit of pressure involved there that impacted that play too. You can see the timing starting to come around with those guys, and that's what I thought stood out to me the most in the second half is Sam was seeing the whole field again. He was scanning the whole field and getting those other guys involved. Here, let's take a look at the box and, let's see. Boom there. Here we go. Um, yeah, so this is how he spread it around in the receiving game, 7 catches, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns for JSN, 4 catches, 67 yards, a 16.8 average for speed. Cooper Kupp, 2 catches, 35 yards, almost broke that, 1 for a touchdown, would have given him 2 on the day, but a 17.5-yard average. Catches to AJ Barner, and he had a drop. Zach Charbonnet, 2 for 20, he had a drop. White, 1 for 9. Elijah Arroyo didn't have any catches, he had 1 target. He left this game with a knee injury, and otherwise, it seems like the Seahawks came out of this one pretty clean. We'll wait to see what's going on with Emmanwori's hand, but it's clearly something he can play through. No other significant injuries out of this one, that I know of, which is a real positive. They had Julian Love on a pitch count, and because of the way the game went, they were able to pull him in the second half and not play him. So no aggravation of that hamstring there. Get him even healthier to face the Colts and the Rams would be huge. Remember, this is the first time that they've had all 11 guys that they want to have on the field at the same time. Because even at the beginning of the season, when so much focus we talked so much about how the secondary hasn't played together since the 5th snap of the season, but Nuosa wasn't there yet. And, we've seen how good he's been since he came back from injury. So this really is the first time they played a defense that we expected, with the exception, of course, being that Drake Thomas has taken over for, uh, Tyrese Knight at weak side linebacker. But just a really nice job spreading that around. And then, even running the football. Charbonnet had in the first half, one big one and then not much else. Worked into this thing much more as the game went along. He's kinda talked about a tough time. 10 carries, 29 yards. He did have a big run called back, due to a penalty at one point. But Charbonnet in the second half was really solid. So he averages 6.6 per carry. Velus Jones in garbage time had a couple of nice runs. Another long one that called back due to a penalty, pretty ticky-tack, questionable one. And then you see Sam Darnold, 3 carries, 23 yards, a 7.7 average, with a long of 12. That was pretty big. 129 yards total, on rushing. Ernest Jones, 11 more tackles. He was flying all over the place. That knee is clearly healthy. Witherspoon, 7 tackles. Emmanwori, 6. Just 1 sack today by Emmanwori, but 10 passes defensed by that secondary. They hit Cousins 7 times, had 3 tackles for loss. Um, and then on the other side, again, 2 sacks in the first half, and then nothing after that, and they only hit Sam 3 times. And then I know we talked about this in the Discord. It is kind of just a weekly subject, but, we'll obviously have to watch the all 22 to go back and see. This might have been Anthony Bradford's best game. There was one big run in particular where he pulled and just obliterated his guy. Thought he looked good. The times I was watching him in the second half, pass protection, had a couple other big drive blocks on some runs. Um, it's a good time for him to play well because Jalen Sandell is eligible to come off injured reserve this week. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that. Um, complete hunch right now. I think he'll be given a chance to compete for that right guard spot. I don't think it'll be immediately after coming off the injured list. I would think that they would want to see him. Well, 2 things. I would think that they would wanna see him get 2 weeks of practice, even though with Thursday night coming up in 2 weeks, week 16, it'll be a week and a half of practice essentially, or a week of practice and some walkthroughs. And I think they probably behind closed doors feel like they can beat the Colts with what they have right now. No need to rush him back. I think he's gonna be in the mix. And I thought that, when McDonald was asked specifically about Bradford last week, I thought how honest he was about some of the bad plays and about how it needs to get better and how there is going to be competition. I do think Sundell will get a chance, and, if Bradford slips up again, has another poor game, they're probably gonna wanna make that switch in the next couple of weeks if they're thinking about doing it so that you have a couple of weeks to get that group acclimated into the playoffs. Yeah, Carson Schwessinger, misfit, makes a good point. It's gonna be tough to beat out for defensive rookie of the year. He's been so good from the very first week. Pedro says my mic's cutting out a bit. How's it sound now? Something was going on with this mixer where it was playing something in the background. Just to be safe, I'll get rid of that ESPN tab in the background because sometimes they play ads. Let's see. Yeah, rooting for the Lions to beat the Rams next week because the Cardinals suck. Uh, I don't know. I felt better about that Lions team after watching them this week. Um, and I don't know. I don't know. The Rams look last time I checked, they look like they're putting it all back together this week and getting themselves ready, but, um, that's the hope, is at the very least, even if the Rams beat the Lions are physical, especially on offense, and that could work in the Seahawks' favor. there's a scenario. I'm not gonna take this Colts team lightly, but with Riley Leonard at quarterback, they'd have to beat Jonathan Taylor, and we saw where the final numbers would be. Just check that again, but they held him in check, right? Bijan Robinson, 20 carries, 86 yards, a 4.3-yard average. If you can hold Jonathan Taylor to a 4.3-yard average, you're beating the Colts with Riley Leonard playing quarterback. And so that's what you wanna look at when you have a Thursday game is how much punishment do you face and do you get the week before? So this is from 30 minutes ago. Is my mic okay now? Get back down to where we are. Get some more current ones. Ooh, I like this question from John. And by the way, my mic good? Ooh, Sean had to leave. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for being here. Martin Lawrence has been a member for 11 months, 10 wins after 13 games. I'll take that every time. Thanks for being a member. Really appreciate the support. Uh, yeah, I like this one from John. Can Cable Dude be the starting right guard next year? I know they're big on him. I was trying to watch him. He only got a couple of snaps at the end of the game this week, but um, I can't remember if this was Discord. I think I tweeted it. I think there's a really good chance that Bryce Cable is the starting guard next year. They loved him all through the process, brought him to the VMAC for a 30 visit, knew there was buzz before the draft, and then obviously they drafted him, they protect him on the roster, on the cut to 53, didn't want to expose him to waivers. He has been active on most game days. He has been the first choice as the backup right guard at times. They worked him at center a little bit in training camp, but it sounds like now Haynes has kinda become the 3rd center, if you will, if you consider Sundell the 2nd center now. Cable is a tremendous athlete for his size. Uh, Athletic enough to run this scheme the way it's meant to be run, but I think strong enough also to have the kind of base that you need. So it could be the perfect sort of compromise between an Anthony Bradford and a Jalen Sundell, because my concern with Sundell, if he gets an opportunity to go at right guard, is that base isn't as strong. But he's technically, I think, probably better. He can make up for that, at times than Anthony Bradford. Anthony Bradford's got a strong base, but when he puts the head down like he does and he lunges, he nullifies that. But Cable I think, has it might be the complete package, and if you think about the advantage that that would give this team, first of all, we're gonna be talking a lot over the offseason about continuity in the offensive line. Now, I have said that if they are gonna make a move at right guard, not if, they are. Anthony Bradford's not going to be the starting right guard for this team in 2026, I can assure you. I don't think he'll be rostered. Talked about this before. He's not starting for you. He has no value as a backup because he can only play one spot. The Seahawks like those guys to play multiple spots. All the rest of the guys can. They've cross-trained all of them to play every spot on the interior, and Sendell can even play tackle, and Richmond could as well in a pinch. So if Bradford's not starting, he's not on the. But I thought, well, bring in a veteran. Maybe we revisit the Cesar Ruiz thing from New Orleans, or bring a guy in because it's the youngest offensive line in the league. He averages 24 years across that line. Let's bring in some experience. But if you have a guy like Cable that could be an upgrade over Bradford, still give you continuity, and you bring all 5 of those guys back, and they get to play together a whole 'nother year, and now Jalen Sundell is like your super sub. Mason Richmond can be kinda too. Maybe bring Josh Jones back on another deal. Now we're talking, and then that's also money you don't have to spend. You don't have to go spend $7, $8 million for a veteran guard, for a Cesar Ruiz, who would be 9.5 against your cap if you traded for him, or a Joel Bitonio, who may get one of those Kevin Zeitler type 1-year, $8 million kinda deals. Now that's money that you don't have to spend there. You're gonna extend cross. I'm already that's an assumption. You can bake that into whatever you look at for the salary cap next year. But if a guy like Cable is able to do that, well, now you can take that money, that allows you to bring Requel. That allows you to extend Requel and Charles Cross and Derek Hall and Kobe Bryant, right? Just frees up a little bit more money you don't have to spend elsewhere, because 'cause they're not gonna have to be out there being aggressive in free agency next year. I think they're gonna explore some trade opportunities. We've talked about that, with some difference makers. But I think Cabledu's going to get a shot, and I think internally, I think they're thinking that as well. I think if you ask Mike McDonald right now, is there a shot that he's your starting guard next year? And he was completely honest, which he probably wouldn't be, he would say, yeah, John says, "Bradford not being here next year is a silver lining we dream of." I think there's a scenario where neither Bradford nor Haynes is here next year. They don't if Haynes, again, isn't good enough to start, well, then a third-year guard who was a third-round draft pick and considered, uh, one of the best zone guards in the draft that year, if not the best, might still get you a late pick as some value, as hard as it is for teams. A, to find offensive linemen that are good in this league anyway. B, in a draft class, an offensive line draft class that's being billed as not so would you rather spend like a third round pick in a poor draft to try and find your starting guard? Or maybe you toss us a conditional fifth, we give you Christian Haynes. Or if you're a gap team, you might want Anthony Bradford. Cheap, fourth round contract, fourth year of his deal. There's really, there's not a lot of risk for the acquiring team. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's how I in my twisted head, that's how I kinda view drafts, is so many people wanna make grand judgments on things quickly, and so you'd have people right now that might look at this draft class and say, "It kinda stinks." Yeah, you got Zabel and Emmanwori out of it, but Robbie Yates hasn't given you much value as a fullback as you thought you'd like. Arroyo really hasn't been involved in the offense. Jalen Milroe's been inactive for game day. Richmond hasn't played. Cabledew hasn't played. Mills hasn't played. Ricky White's been a practice squad guy. You look at it in those terms, you can make the argument that not a great draft class. It's not how it works though, right? Let's look back in 3 years, but I think you start to think that way. Okay, next year, sure, we only have 4 picks. We only have a first, second, third, and a sixth, but Riley Mills might be in this year's draft class, fully healthy, this upcoming year's draft class, he's a day 2 guy. You kinda get that as a bonus, and then I think you make the same argument for Cable Dew, and I think Mason Richmond is a guy that they're really high on. And I think Oot's value will continue to grow. I'm disappointed what they've done or haven't done there. There's a big run today where he had a big key block, they called holding on it, but then even the broadcast team thought it was a shitty call. Um, and they haven't I just thought we saw it in the Kansas City preseason game one time, and ever since then, I've been hoping for it. But he was a college tight end. Like, I expected some Kyle Juszczyk type throws into the flat where he leaks out. They haven't done that at all yet. That's kinda surprising and a little bit disappointing. John McGrath saying Jason Myers making a strong case to be re-signed. Yeah, I've had people for 3 years tell me that he's making too much money, he should be cut, he should draft a kicker. Very, very solid. Very, very solid. Um, X-Wing Dispatch, good to see you. Says, "Where are we as far as Myers' contract?" I believe this is the 2nd year of his 3-year deal. He's the highest paid kicker in the league, right? Look it up. Mhm. Let's see. 4-year, $21.1 million contract he signed. Hold on. Runs through next year. Yeah, so he's entering into the 4th year of his deal. His cap hit next year will be 6.9 well, essentially $7,000,000. None of that is guaranteed. If you cut him, you'd have, 1.9 million dead, save 5.1. He'll be 35 next year. Doesn't seem to be slowing down. He's as accurate as ever. Maybe the 60-yarder isn't something that he has in his bag as much as when he was younger. Um, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I don't think there'd be any urgency to extend him before next year. I think when a kicker gets to that age, maybe you just let the contract play out. It's not a bad cap number. Live with that. Um, Martin Lawrence says, "I'm worried that either Arroyo isn't as good as we thought to take him in the 2nd round, hoping it's more that we haven't figured out the best way to use him." I think that's what it is. I mean, I've gotten to know his game really well. Got to watch him the whole week at the Senior Bowl, and he was like everybody else was scared, he was scared. Like, he was so much better everybody else athletically, the route running, the hands, all of it's legit. I just think they haven't worked it into what they do yet, and it does invite criticism. If what you're trying to do is be a tough, physical, balanced team that runs the football, then if you're gonna spend second round value on a tight end, he damn well better give you a return on that investment, and if it's because there just isn't a place for him in this offense, well, shouldn't you have known that going into the draft? Like, I'm not saying it's a bad draft pick. I'm just saying that's an argument that can be made, and it's legitimate. It may be one that, you know, you or I or anyone else, maybe you don't agree with, but it's a valid argument. Um, I think the ability is there that at some point we're going to see it come to fruition. Clint Kubiak certainly has shown that he can use his tight ends. You look at the numbers in New Orleans last year when they had some injury issues with, with Olave got hurt and, some other guys. I remember they had to bring MVS in. Shaheed broke his leg, was out for the year, then bring MVS in at the end of the year, and he pivoted to Alvin Kamara, caught like 60 balls, and his top 3 tight ends combined to catch a shit ton of balls in New Orleans last year. He's done it. Maybe it's just a case of he just hasn't been the guy, the read on any of those plays, or they haven't needed to go out of their way to try and scheme him open. I just thought he was gonna be a mismatch and a weapon. We haven't seen that come to fruition yet. So, I guess the bright side there is if this knee injury is significant enough to take him away for a couple weeks, maybe land him on IR, are you gonna miss him that much, especially with Saubert coming back, AJ Barr's done. Now we're seeing Nick Callerup, the undrafted rookie, and what a stud he is as a blocker. He's got a little upside as a guy in the passing game too, and maybe he just gets some opportunities that way. So let me make sure I haven't missed anything. Yeah, Johnny says, "So stoked to see Shaheed make an impact." I'd love to get Torrey Horton back too. You know, I think that would really give him some cool opportunities to at times, it's not gonna be a core part, but at times, put all 3 of them out there, really stretch defenses on the back end, maybe force them to have to back out of the box and run the football a little bit. Um, on the defense, I had something prepared here that I thought was really cool that I wanted to share with you all. This is put it here. It's a quick little 9-second clip. This is Nick Emmanwori today making a statement after the game.
I think this defense is like historic almost. It's kind of like people don't want to almost kind of shy away from saying that, but I really do think this.
New mixer again.
I think this defense is like historic almost. It's kind of like people don't want to almost kind of shy away from saying that, but I really do think this is. It's a special defense.
Yeah, sorry about that. The mixer's all screwed up. Anyway, what he said there is, he thinks it's a historic defense, that people don't really wanna say that, right? You wanna stay humble, you don't wanna make grand judgments like that, but I think it's a historically good defense. Let's see where they're at as we speak. They might sometimes they don't update these all that quick. Let's see if they've jumped up in the numbers league-wide points per game as we sit here today. They are second now, 17.4 points per game allowed, and that's up to date. That's through 13 games played. The Texans are a game behind us. They're at 16-5. So the Seahawks now less than a point from taking over the lead, in the NFL. So they're second in points per game. The Rams right behind them at 17.5, and the Broncos, Patriots, Packers, Chiefs. Let me just check back in here. Anything going on with that San Francisco game that I should know about? Or I mean, the Rams game? Nah, 45-10. Okay, yeah. Thanks for nothing, Cardinals. I mean, they gotta fire him, right? It's just not working. Like, you can talk about an injury here or there, but they've had 3 drafts where they've traded down a bunch, picked up a bunch of extra picks, went out and spent a bunch of money on free agency this year. Not in a vacuum, all the moves made sense, but it just hasn't resulted in anything on the field. Maybe Petzing just becomes the scapegoat, and Gannon survives, and they make a change at quarterback. Man, I don't know. That's tough. That's really tough. Um, Here we go from, Ole734 with the super chat. Thank you very much. "Hey, Dan, I like seeing Sam Darnold use his legs for a change today. He doesn't use them often enough." Um, yeah, I'm with you, and I didn't have time to clip it and play it, but if you get a chance to go back and watch McDonald's, um, comments after the game, he was asked by Greg Bell, "Is that a point of emphasis?" That's something you talked to Sam about. He seemed more decisive about those 2 runs today, and he said, "Yeah, it's something that we think gives us an advantage, something he can do." And so I think there's been a number of times this year where there have been opportunities in the red zone or on 3rd down for Sam to pick up yardage with his legs, and he's just not thinking in in those terms. Would really like to see him mix that up at times. It just keeps and it makes those linebackers have to stay honest, right? Martin says, "I like the fact Shaheed and Kupp got targets today. It's repeated for the rest of the season. That will help take away double coverages from JSN." I think what do you guys think of the Kupp acquisition? Like, some skeptics will look at the numbers, just the raw numbers, and go, "Nah, I don't know if that's great return for what you paid." I think he's been incredibly valuable. I really do. I mean, we talk about the run blocking, we talk about the coaching and the stuff that he does on the sidelines, but he's come up with significant plays too. I mean, if you think, okay, Rashid Shaheed is technically or should be the 2nd option in this offense. Kupp's your 3rd. I think he's been really productive, you know? Let's see here. Look at his, season numbers again, just to back that up. He is he's 3rd on the team with 34 catches, 438 yards, 12.9-yard average. I think that's 2nd best on the team behind JSN. I think that's probably a little bit better depth of reception than you would expect Cooper Kupp at this point in his career with where he's at athletically. Um, they haven't updated this though because 'cause they're showing only 1 touchdown. That was his 2nd touchdown catch, right? So it might even be better than this, but I think those are good numbers. He ends up catching 50 balls for 600 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think that's with everything else he gives you, I think that's solid contribution, and wouldn't even hesitate to bring back next year. He's one of those guys too that if he really loves it here and wants to end his career here, there's some pretty easy adjustments you can do on his contract to clear up a little bit of cap space if you tack out on whatever. Yeah, he makes the other receivers better, and he comes up with big plays. Still catches the ball very well. He does. Stefan says he's very expensive for a wide receiver 3. This is this is something that I've done over the last 10, 15 years. I would encourage you to all do it too, because it makes watching football a lot and a lot less stressful. I don't give a shit how much guys are paid. I don't. All I care about is the team as a whole that's on the field every year. Because for every player that you think is overpaid, someone else is giving you great value. Nick Emmanwori is doing everything he's doing on the 2nd round cap hit, right? Oluwatimi is giving you really solid center play, something we haven't had here for 10 years for 5th round money. You're saving money elsewhere, right? You have your corners are all on rookie contracts, and they're cheap. You're getting starting level caliber safety play out of Ty Okada, undrafted free agent. Drake Thomas is playing for peanuts, and he's giving you high level starting inside linebacker play. Byron Murphy's on a rookie deal. See what I'm saying? You make up for it. So who cares? You can't go through a whole roster and go, "Okay, well, you're the 4th leading receiver on our team, so you only should be making this much." It doesn't work that way. Look at the big picture and don't in a vacuum, Try not to care as much about what guys are making. Um, if a guy signs a big free agent deal, he's making $20 million a year. Draymond Jones, great example. What he was making absolutely was more than what they were getting from him on the field. That's when it does become an issue. You're not getting the return on the investment overall, and if you keep him on the roster, it's gonna prevent you maybe from doing other things. So they moved on from him, right? He was still a solid player. He gave them contributions, but it didn't really match the money. I don't bat an eye at what Cooper Kupp's making. And also there's a lot of non-guaranteed money left on the deal, so there's a lot of wiggle room that you could use to clear some cap space as well. Yeah, I can't wait to see Torrey Horton get back. I think his long-term upside where it gets really exciting, whether they bring Cooper back Kupp back again or not. And I think the realistic option here is he plays in 2026. It's still a really young wide receiver group, and then he probably doesn't see that 3rd year of his deal. But you think about JSN, Shaheed, and Horton next year with another year under their belt, another year for Arroyo. Like, for a team that wants to run the football, that's a pretty scary position group that defenses have to account for. Yeah, great point, Martin. I mean, Kupp's value, I think, to JSN, Horton, Shaheed, invaluable. And maybe he's one of those guys that when he's ready to retire, he just slides right over and becomes like the passing game coordinator, right? Uh, it's good times. Let's just check some scores here. Any other surprises today? Again, the Colts lose their 4th out of 5. They lose to the Jaguars 36-19. Let me see if the standings are up here. We want to look at point differences now. Um, the Seahawks are now plus 161, which leads the Rams by 40, almost 40 points. There's only 3 teams that are plus 100. And just, in the last 2 games alone, right? What's their point differential? Is, let's see if I can do some quick math. What's 37 and 17? 54? Did I do that right? Coug math. Don't tell me about Coug math. By the way, fuck Jimmy Rogers. Say that just for the record, just for fun. Ol734, thanks again for the super chat. Nick Emmanwori, my new name for him. I do like that. He's an absolute beast today. Yeah, John Schneider hit an absolute home run in drafting him. It just goes to show you, and I think this is important to keep in mind as we look ahead to next year's draft, which is now you're starting to see it level out a little bit, right? The narrative of the last 3 or 4 months from casual draft fans or even from the analysts was, next year's draft sucks, right? That's what we do. We overreact. So as soon as we hear someone say that the 2026 draft isn't the best class, then we all just start saying as fans, "Well, it sucks. It sucks. Get rid of all the picks. Trade them all. We don't need." That's never the way I look at the draft. And I think Emmanwori is a really good example of that. This draft in 2025 was called light at the top, only 3 or 4 blue chippers, deep through about the first 80 or 90 picks, but not great. Not one of the better drafts we've seen. And yet they get Nick Emmanwori in the 2nd round, and he's becoming a star. Why? Because of fit and conviction. It doesn't matter. Another thing, trying to help you guys out. Ignore any draft analyst who says the 2026 draft sucks. Don't allow yourself to then think that that means you can't get any value out of it. You absolutely can. It's about your scouting staff, your needs, your scheme, and finding the right players that fit. Every single year, you can find players that fit and make stars out of them. Last year wasn't supposed to be a great draft. Look how it transformed the future of the New England Patriots. Absolutely home run draft. I can say the same thing about the Cleveland Browns. Look at their draft, the contributions they're getting from it in a year that wasn't supposed to be a very good draft. And oh, by the way, maybe Shedeur Sanders can play in this league. 3 touchdowns today. Threw for over 300 yards. Maybe they found something there. So just a little tangent there that I trust this scouting staff to find players for this coaching staff that can make an impact regardless of how good or bad objectively we're going to, uh, find any draft. Uh, hey, Mickey says, "How are you, Dan?" I'm good, thanks for being here. I really appreciate you. C. Brandon says, "JSN makes Darnold look so much better. All good receivers make quarterbacks look better." Johnny A says, "Sam's still young for a QB." By the way, since we're talking quarterbacks, and since I've been on a little bit of a soapbox today about trying to teach you something, these are all lessons that come with age. I was a hothead when I was younger, and I overreacted to things, and if I thought one way, you could change my mind. That has changed. I've gotten older and wiser and started doing this, on a full-time basis. Um, our insistence on making global judgments on players with tiny little sample sizes. The amount of bullshit that I've heard around JJ McCarthy this year, that it was a mistake for the Vikings, the GM should be fired, he's terrible, he can't play in this league. Because what? Because of 5 or 6 games? He's, if not he's one of the youngest players in the entire NFL playing quarterback. He was 21 when he was drafted. He has raw skills, but a tremendous amount of upside, and the fact that that didn't all come together and look perfect in 5 games, he can't play, threw 3 touchdowns today, and the Vikings had a blowout, shutout win. They bounced back from losing, what was it, 26 to nothing last week? Let me go, 'cause this is kind of fun. This tells you a lot about the NFL. They lose 26 nothing to the Seahawks last week, and remember, the other thing about overreacting to quarterbacks, everyone was trying to tell us last week, not everyone, a lot of people were, Max Bros were better than JJ McCarthy, that he could be the guy. Uh, how did that turn out, right? But then they turn around, they beat the Commanders 31 nothing today. And yeah, it's not a good Commanders team. Commanders team that made it to the NFC Championship game last year. They're not good right now. I get it. But to beat an NFL team by 31 points the week after you get beat 26 nothing, pretty impressive. Pretty damn impressive bounce back for I thought for JJ in that game. Okay. I'm gonna fight you on this a little bit, Brandon. Brandon. I'm gonna fight you on this a little bit. And again, it's for your own good. I'm here to help. He says, "I'm not gonna praise Darnold till after the 2 divisional games." Let me paint a scenario for you. If the Seahawks beat the Colts, beat the Panthers, right? Am I missing a game? There's 4 games left, right? And finish 12 and 5 because they lose to the Rams and the 49ers. They go to the playoffs. Maybe they win a game, whatever. I hope a bunch of you agree with me that that doesn't mean this team isn't headed in the right direction and that it won't be a Super Bowl favorite next year, bringing almost this entire roster back intact and probably adding a couple of good players to it as well. That's just kind of where they are in their evolution. I don't expect them to be perfect right now. I would consider that a successful season. I would consider it a very successful season. Frustrating? Yeah. Would the big question in the offseason be, you've gotta beat the 49ers and Rams? Yeah. And then in 2026, if you fail to beat the Rams and 49ers again, then is it a huge issue that there needs to be some accountability for and some questions answered and some changes made? Yes. But to say, I'm not gonna praise Darnold unless he beats the Rams and 49ers, I think that's short-sighted. I think you're cheating yourself a little bit. Sam Darnold just broke an all-time record. Nobody has ever won more games in back-to-back seasons playing for 2 separate teams. Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. Manning went for the Colts to the Broncos. He won 24 games combined. When Brady went from the Patriots to the Bucks, he won 24 games combined. Sam just won his 25th. He's still just 28 years old. He's only played on good teams for 2 years now. started. I know he was on the 49ers. He didn't I try not to be um, that stringent and restricted in my thinking. I get it. He's gonna have to answer to that, but Rams 49ers or bust, I don't buy into that. He could lose the Rams in 2 weeks, end of the 49ers in week 18, and everything with this organization could still be heading exactly where it needs to. I just watched the, Netflix documentary the other day, the America's Team, about the Cowboys and how they became the dynasty they were in the '90s, and it reminded me that other great quarterbacks in our history have had nemesis, right? Some of the greatest quarterbacks. Peyton couldn't beat Brady. There are a bunch of examples about that. Lamar can't beat the Chiefs. We've seen Josh Allen can't get past Patrick Mahomes, okay? Troy Aikman couldn't and the Dallas Cowboys could not beat the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles kicked their ass his first couple of years in the league. They even when they got good, they beat everybody else, they couldn't beat the Eagles. Then they finally did. I think it was either a playoff game or it was near the end of the year for the division. He finally overcame. At some point, for this team to get to where we want them to get to, that has to happen. It doesn't have to be week 16. Don't get me wrong. I want it to. It would be incredibly important for it to, and I would be ecstatic for it to, and disappointed if it doesn't, but it doesn't have to. I hope I made sense there. I try to, but yeah, sometimes not always. Yeah, eventually he's going to have to beat that team to answer questions. But here's the other thing about week 16. If he doesn't beat him in week 16, I think he's gonna get another chance in January too. Which one would you rather have if you could only pick one? I get it. I just don't agree with the "it has to happen or else" viewpoint. It would just mean that that question hasn't been answered yet. Eventually, it's going to have to be. This would help. Use your legs more, right? Ooh, by the way, shout out since they have a home games the next 2 weeks, and then they finish out their season, right? Fast Fashion Brewing right there. Really proud to have those guys as sponsors. They're down in Sodo on First Avenue, right across the street from Showbox Soda, right next door to Hooverville. I think it's the 1700 block of First Avenue in Sodo. Some of the best beers in Seattle. They have a wide variety of homemade craft beers. Matt Storm is the guy that runs the show down there. Say hi to him for me. Tell him I sent you. And, in fact, one of their beers, their Bavarian Pilsner, was just named by a national magazine as one of the top 20 craft beers in the country this year. Really good stuff. Proud to have them as a sponsor. Hop in there and have a beer before the Colts game or before the Thursday game on week 16. I do wanna get out of here because I know Bryce over on the Hawks Eye is gonna be starting up soon if he hasn't started already, and try not to go head to head because I like to jump in there and beat opponents too. So if that's what some of you are gonna do, I will see you over there. Thanks to everybody for being here. About 1,100 of you right now. Really appreciate that. Over the next few days, there should be regular shows the next 2 days, including an interview with, former NFL offensive lineman Rob Tucker on Tuesday. Really excited about that. Tomorrow, I think I'm gonna react to Mike McDonald's coach's show on, 710 ESPN. You guys seem to enjoy doing that. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'll try to do what I can, but no promises. My father's service is Friday, and then we're flying back to West Virginia this weekend, but I'm still gonna try to crank out as many videos as I can. So the intention, the goal is still to do one every day. Um, just know that may be subject to change. Another super thanks or super chat coming in from Ole 734. Appreciate that. Thank you. We need second half Darnold in both halves going forward. More decisiveness, less skittishness. Love seeing him complete passes that Shaheed today. Yeah, that would kind of be the next step. That's if there's one thing sitting here a week away now that I would love to see in the Colts game, let's get back to starting fast. We haven't seen that in the last 5 weeks, and that was a theme the first half of the season, ever since the Pittsburgh game anyway. Let's get back to that. Let's be more balanced, come out with a better plan on those scripted plays, the first 15 or however many Kubiak does. Let's get off to a little bit better start, especially against a team like the Colts that's kinda reeling right now. They're gonna be without their quarterback. You kinda wanna do the same thing you did to the Vikings, like, make a statement right off the bat that, "Hey, it's gonna be a tough, tough day for you, and slow down Jonathan Taylor, make life tough on Riley Leonard, get that offense going." Again, they're gonna be facing a Colts team, doesn't pressure as much, they're near the bottom of the league. They don't disguise their coverages as much. Just have a really good plan, and, uh, and let's see a complete game out of the offense. I think we would all feel much better about that, heading into the rematch against the Rams. All right, guys, I'm gonna head out. If some of you are heading over to the Hawks Eye on, Bryce's show over there, I'll see you there, and, until tomorrow, forever and always, go Hawks. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Best way to support me, full-time content creator. All the ways you can support me are down below, listed and linked. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you